So I was born and raised right outside Philadelphia and practice in Center City in Philly. But I also now live in New Jersey and also practice in New Jersey. Right across the river here in New Jersey, we have very strong whistleblower protections for employees under CEPA, which is the Conscientious Employee Protection Act. Basically, what it says is that if an employee has a reasonable belief that their employer is engaging in illegal conduct and voices objection to that or opposition to it, and is then retaliated against for raising the complaint about the illegal activity, that employee then has a cause of action or a right to bring a lawsuit against that employer. Pennsylvania, though, does not have an equivalent law. There are some very narrow whistleblower protections for employees, but it's not widespread, and it particularly is focused on employers that obtain state funding or federal funding. So that eliminates a lot of employers in Pennsylvania from being subjected to the same potential liability, and eliminates a lot of protection for the employees. So my question is, have you focused on this at all, or has the legislation focused on this at all? And if they have, what is your thoughts on the chances that anything like this could be passed in Pennsylvania under the current state of the legislature?
Under the current state, slim to none.
Okay.
Okay, so you said you're talking about the laws that are in New Jersey. And
Yeah.
New Jersey, you have, and when these were passed, you probably had both the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. Again, we go back to what I started out talking about. You know, it's all about the numbers, and it's all about having the majority, because that's how you get to control what the legislation is. So under current right now, the biggest thing I heard, I'm on the education committee. So no, I have not focused on the Whistleblower Act. Like I said, a lot of these are judiciary committee bills. When you get assigned, when you get elected, you get assigned certain committees, and that becomes your focus. That's where you've been assigned to focus on the laws that govern that area. So I'm on the education committee. I'm on the environmental, energy, and resources committee. I'm on urban affairs, and I'm on the liquor. So I deal with a lot of liquor law. You know, so in all honesty, that's not something that I've been focused on. I just happened to, in full disclosure, prior to working in politics, I did work in law firms. I did zoning and land use, so I have an understanding of where you're going with some of this stuff. But again, it comes back to elections. I feel it's not. I think if we could get the majorities in both the House and the Senate, and remember, we're doing redistricting next year also, so that changes those seats, and hopefully they become much fairer than they are now. You would have the possibility, because again, go back to, we as Democrats believe in workers' rights and making sure there's safe work environments, and making sure that they are able to have their voice, in that, which includes their right to speak up. And that we need to change laws and make them more friendly towards that. Right now, on the education committee, you know what I sat and listened to last week and during hearings? How we have to give liability relief to corporations, schools, and every other entity in the middle of this pandemic. Otherwise, the economy will never move forward, and we will never be able to open schools, and we'll never be able, because no one should have to bear that risk of liability in the courts.
But if it's not really a risk and it's not really a real virus, why are they worried about getting a waiver?
Well, don't try and attack their rhetoric.
Seems very circular.
You know, it depends on your audience. And
well,
I'm going to right now with regard to schools is schools don't want to have liability.
How divided is the legislature in Pennsylvania when you're in hearings like that? Is there just this divide between the Republicans and the Democrats, or are there people on the Republican side that you think are people that you can reach out to reach agreement and compromise over things?
Well, it depends on the issue, in all honesty. On my liquor committee, we are pretty much bipartisan on everything. We work everything out. It's like, okay, well, this person's got this issue in their district. This became the only thing we fight about is when they want to like just throw out the entire liquor system being controlled by Pennsylvania. And people like me say, you have an asset that produces hundreds of millions of dollars in profit above taking care of themselves and paying for themselves. Why would you give that asset away? But other than that, we get along great. Urban Affairs, another committee that works really well together because we try and have to deal with legislation that are urban areas only. I'm not dealing with issues that are going to affect a rural area in Pennsylvania. Education can be bipartisan and you can work on things, but there's certain, there's triggers. Charter schools, the big trigger between the two caucuses. Everybody wants schools to open safely, but everyone needs to understand in an urban district like Philadelphia, where you have an aging infrastructure of schools that already have lead and asbestos issues in them, it's pretty hard, and there's not enough space and they're overcrowded. It's pretty hard to figure out a way to do social distancing and making sure that people aren't getting more exposed to bad situations. In a rural district that has a big sprawling campus high school, they have plenty of room to spread out, and they have the ability to make sure that their students go back in. So you can't just say everybody go back to school. It's different for everybody. So you can work it out. And long and short, what I'm trying to say on this is that we can be very bipartisan, except on the Environmental Resources and Energy Committee. Darrell Metcalf controls that. There's no getting along on that one. Very rarely, I should say. That we're always fighting on that. But that's kind of the fun of it, because it's the insanity of who he brings forward to state his cases on how there's nothing wrong with the environment and coal is great. Is amazing. But you have to, at some point, you have to govern. I met with a person who just won a primary and is going to be coming to Harrisburg for the first time. And we sat down to have coffee, and I said, you do understand now that your time for rhetoric and your campaign speeches is over. Now it's time to govern. And sometimes you have to put up votes that you don't like to put up. And sometimes you're going to have to do things that don't match necessarily everything that you thought you were talking about during your campaign. But the job is to represent the people that elected you and do it to the best of your ability. And so that means getting along with the other side and trying to come up with ways to make good law that takes care of people, because we are supposed to be working on the public health, safety, and welfare of the people of the Commonwealth.
Thank you for that. Thank you.